What's up, Ramblers? Your favorite CEO is back. And before we begin today's podcast, make sure you hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode. And follow Assistance HQ and Offsource HQ across all platforms to stay up to date on the latest content, updates, and more. And remember, if you need a virtual assistant, visit us at offsource.tech. Now, before we begin, a word from our sponsor.
What's going on, Ramblers? Welcome back to another wonderful episode of the Ramblings. I'm hyped. As you guys know, I'm recording this directly after yesterday's episode. So the 5 minutes apart, like two different episodes, 5 minutes apart. I want to do something completely different for today's episode. I was like, what am I going to do today for today's episode? And so I was like, I know what I'm going to do, considering that none of you guys are asking questions. I figured I would run down the latest QTNAs from Twitter. So what I did was I went into Twitter, typed in hashtag QTNA, hashtag business, and just went to latest and see what came up. And so surprisingly, there are some questions there and some topic points that I think might make for something pretty valuable. So I decided to make this a little bit different. We're going to jump right on the internet to get some questions, not from viewers, questions not from viewers. I think that's what we can call this segment. Questions from non-viewers or non-question view. You get what I'm trying to say. You get what I'm trying to say. All right. So the very first tweet says, let's discuss. People aren't afraid to start. They are afraid of starting small or starting at square one. The idea of starting at page 1 while you watch someone's page 3,000 is fear-inducing. There is vulnerability found in the journey that most want to skip. Now, there's no questions in that, but I agree with that statement because I absolutely feel like a lot of business owners, and I that's actually why I started the Ramblings. So that's a great talking point right there, right? So let's start there. I started the Ramblings to really highlight underrepresented business owners, to really be able to interview and bring a spotlight to the owners that we pass over every single day. The bodega owners, the restaurant owners, the hair salon owners, the nail shop owners, the eBay flippers, the small time poets, the artists, producers, rappers locally. You know, all of these people are business owners in their own aspect and regard, and we pass over them every single day. Every single day. Especially if you live, say, like in a place like New York, right? You can go to the bodega for your sandwich, a franchise Dunkin' Donuts for coffee. You can go get local streetwear, the hot dog vendor on the street, where you're pumping your gas at if you're, doing gas. If you're doing Uber, yeah, Uber goes to like a larger company, but you're also helping a local independent 1099 contractor in that city, right? If you're a business owner, chances are you're going to use a lot of small business services from like a bookkeeper, social media. So all of these people are underlooked business owners, especially when they're super small business owners. And so when you look at like the just breaking small point to reaching like a medium-sized business, it's very, very intimidating for someone who has absolutely none of that and really doesn't even know what the process would look like to take it to get there. It can be very overwhelming for a lot of like first-time founders, first-time business owners, because you're looking at someone who's generating $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year, or sometimes even $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 every month. Right. And so that can be intimidating because you're like, oh, when people see business, when people think of business, when we're listening to these podcasts and we're looking at Forbes and we're looking at Business Insider, all of these people are on page 3,000 and you're starting on page 1. And so when people think business, they think page 3,000. They don't think page 1, page 10, page 20. They don't think about the conflict arc in page 100 to 300 in a 3,000 page book. And people only see page 3,000. They don't know that there was a 250 page arc of nothing but conflict. Nothing but conflict. There could have been in that 250 page arc of conflict, there could have been 13 straight pages about like the worst suffering you've heard of your entire life, but you only see page 30,000. And so it's very intimidating for the small business owners that are just starting out, the solo founders, the beginning people. So I honestly think that notion is very, very there. I agree with it. And so that's one of the reasons why we have the ramblings. Like, we want to change that notion so that when you hear business, you can understand that people are making 40, 50, 60, 70, $80,000 per year, which is what some of these people are making at their salary jobs, or they're making less than what they're making at their salary jobs because it makes them happy, because they understand, hey, listen, if I want to be in business, I know that it's going to come with, strings here and there. But you have to think, you weren't happy at all in your business. I mean, you weren't happy at all working corporate, and now you're happy, 89, 95% of the time. Think about that. Your happiness literally exponentially increased at that particular point. So I absolutely agree with that point. Let's see what the next tweet says. Which one do you believe is more important? Spending precious time with your children, or having a successful job career? I am biased in this situation. I say spending time with your children. And the reason I say spending time with your children is because, one, success looks very differently to a lot of people, right? People think that if you're not making more than like $100,000, you're not successful. So it very much determines on what your definition of success is in this particular term. But as a product, as a first hand and first generation child of business owners, and not even my mom in this particular sense, because I'm going to completely exclude her and strictly talk about my dad. My dad was like the working all the time business person. And so outside looking in, you would say this is a successful man. He single parent household that he grew up in. His my grandmother raised him and my 4 uncles, in sometimes like a 1-2 bedroom apartment where they were sharing beds, for a majority of time. And they all grew to be, successful within their career. But one of the things that I would like to say is that it should not come at the expense of, being with your kids. It should not at all. And I'm biased, and I don't know what it would be like to, if you say you're not talking about success, right? And you're talking about like a struggling entrepreneur, but they're always there for their kids. I haven't been in that situation, so I don't know what it would be like to, maybe have to go hungry and say, oh, well, I'd rather my dad work and take a little bit less time with me because I understand, well, he's there. So that dynamic, I don't have that necessarily, that viewpoint, but I can understand if someone else were to have it. And I'm respecting of it. But as someone who was a child of a parent who, worked all the time and would be considered successful, I absolutely, if I was faced with that decision to have to choose between the both, I'm choosing my children. And it can almost be seen as choosing your children because you chose the job, because you want to be able to provide all of these different experiences and things of that nature. But putting your kids first is something that they can feel. Right. And so they can't feel you working to provide for them. Now, I could be wrong. Some kids, I'm sure, can see that because of their different circumstances. But based on the circumstances that, I was dealing with, the kids don't feel that you're working to be there, like to provide. They just know that you're not there because you have enough. Right. And so this is why I asked what your definition of success is, just because when you have enough and then you're still doing more because you have a different, because of your view of what success means, someone else's view of success might be different. I'm just going to leave it at this. It is statistically proven that making over $70,000, and obviously I think there's been different studies, so I'm sure it ranges, right? So anywhere between $70,000 to $100,000. After you make over anywhere between $70,000 to $100,000, your happiness does not increase. Your happiness level is not exponentially higher because you make more money. Happiness plateaus, right? So in a meter bar of 100% in terms of happiness, your bar is filled up at 70 to 90, 70 to $100,000. That max point of happiness, 100% is 70 to 100,000. But because we know math and we have numbers in business like 200%, which is really just saying 2x, we now look at things as like 100%, 101, 102, 103%. So if you have more money, you must be 105% happy versus 100% happy. No, you're 100% happy because you can not be any happier. Now you can be 2 or 3 times happier than someone else, which would mean they're not 100%. But once you hit 100%, you are at 100%. There is nothing further. The more money you make is not going to bring you more happiness. So at that point, you have to think about the trade-off of what comes with that. So that's what I'm going to say. Like I said, I have a different set of experiences. Things move a lot differently when you're from different backgrounds and have different experiences, like I said. So that's what that says. Next tweet. Let's see what the next tweet says. How does one leave a hospitality social services field and enter the entertainment industry, specifically the entertainment business field? I am almost finished with my master's in global and international business. All right. So what this sounds like is this particular person, because it's Twitter, I can say your Twitter handle, Sean Chantel, @ Lace and Bullets. So to answer that, it sounds like you work at a hotel. Hospitality and social services sounds like you work at a hotel. I obviously could be wrong, but if you're trying to move into the entertainment industry, specifically like the back end of entertainment industry, there's a bunch of different ways you can go about it. I actually, me and a friend of mine, we started a small like record label / media company. Now the goal is to grow this into like a full-fledged like media company. We'll have blogs, we'll have podcasts, we'll have, the full-on works. Cartoon, like works to be a full media like company. But we're starting at a very, very, very small and niche level, local artist. So we're putting together like a studio. We had one, things happened. So we're now putting together like a new studio. We're going to be signing artists in the sense of like distribution deals. And so we're really putting together all of the back end. We are doing the 10 to 30 hours of research that I was talking about yesterday and putting that, well, he's more at like 50, 100 hours because he's been doing this for so long. But I'm putting in like I guess I've been doing this for a couple of years now. So 30 to 100 hours. And I'm at that 30-hour mark at this point, I guess, just from being around enough. So putting in my 30 to 100 hours to really be the back end business within New Haven. Now, depending on where you live demographically, this particular option may not be as viable. Why? Because we live right next to New York. We couldn't do this in New York. Why? Because New York has major music industry, like a major music scene. Connecticut does not have a major music scene. So it makes it easier for us if we start, saying, hey, we're going to take any money that, because I'm founder of Off Stores. He has a regular 9-to-5 job, working in restaurant industry. So we put what we can together to be able to make music, to be able to do the studio time, where we already know like other artists in the local scene. And so we're putting together like a New Haven label. And while there are other Connecticut labels, it's our goal to be like a major label. And so when you look like a lot of these other labels, I don't think they're in like growth mode. Right. I don't know 100%, but I'm willing to bet they're not really in like a real growth mode. They're established. They know where they're at. They're content. Where we're going to come in is be that new voice. Right. So, for example, there's a very, I guess, poppin' radio show within Connecticut now called Bars I-95. And they've gotten like whatchamacallit, Iman Shumpert. Not Iman Shumpert. Is that who's married to Teyana Taylor? I believe it's Iman Shumpert. They got Iman Shumpert to freestyle on the show, or like it was a basketball player. I think it might have been Damian Lillard. One of the basketball people that rap. They got them to be on the show rapping, right? And so they went all the way out there to go do that. But it's called Bars on 95. It's a Connecticut show, and they've significantly grown a following to the point where they could be, like Connecticut's Breakfast Club. Right. And so while it may not be as big as Breakfast Club within the area that we are in, they would be biggest Breakfast Club, if you will. And so what our goal is to be that record label for our area and be that studio that they record at. And so that means that we're on the business side of things, which means we'll be able to sign people, we're able to do deals, all those kinds of things. So that would be my first recommendation. If you live in an area that doesn't have a poppin' music scene, which means if you don't live in like Atlanta, Los Angeles, New York, Houston, like if you don't live in like a major state, I'll even say state, because like companies are usually like in like that state kind of wide area thing. So if you don't live in like New York, Texas, Georgia, California, and those cover like multiple major cities too. So yeah, if you're not like from New York, Texas, Georgia, California, I can't think of any other like states that are major enough in terms of like rappers. It's usually like those areas. If you're not from one of those areas, I recommend becoming like a major business music force in your area. So whether you're doing, music blogs, whether you have a music podcast and music radio show, become that voice in your area for music. Another thing that you can do that I think would be really, really cool is we are VAs, right? So as VAs, I started this company with the idea that, be at like from the employee perspective, being an assistant is like the most dangerous player in the game. If you do live in one of these major cities, go and push and try and find your way to be the assistant to like Rick Ross or Moneybagg Yo, or any of these, like if any record labels that are signing up and coming artists, or if you have any way in with any kind of record label or music industry, be an assistant. Go work in that, like especially when you think about like industry skills, right? So for example, being an assistant's cool, right? But being an assistant for a doctor is completely different than being an assistant for an executive producer of a movie, because you're going to be doing different tasks. You're going to be dealing with different things, right? So if you're dealing with a movie director, you might deal with SAG, right, which is the Screen Actors Guild. Whereas when you're a doctor, you might have to deal with like HIPAA and stuff like that. So there's going to be a lot of different things. My very second piece of advice or opinion would be get into the industry by just getting in, no matter what it is. I don't care if you're an assistant. I'd prefer to be an assistant because that gives you a lot of leeway to go into a bunch of other things, but you really are going to want to be like an assistant. You can also go learn to be a music manager, say, hey, look for up and coming artists and say, I'm going to try and manage like these people and help them find deals, especially if you've already kind of made connections. I don't know specifically a lot of the, everything, because I only know but so much from a tweet, but that's what I would say there. And that's going to conclude today's episode of questions from non-followers, because no one's asking questions, but I feel like we still need to get some of these things answered. So I'll be scrolling through the internet looking for your questions and bringing them to the show. Talk to you guys.
Hey Ramblers, that's it. Podcast is over. Don't leave yet though. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast, and follow us on YouTube at OffSource HQ. We'll see you next time.